What comes to mind when you think of copper? Coins, plumbing, electrical wiring, roofing, all very familiar uses for it.
But you might be surprised to know that copper could quite possibly save your life.
In February of 2008, the Environmental Protection Agency approved the registration of copper as an antimicrobial material. This groundbreaking event marks the first time the agency has allowed public health claims to be made about a solid metal. Dr. Harold Michaels, Senior Vice President for Technology and Tech Services for the Copper Development Association, explains.
We've demonstrated in the laboratory that copper, brass, and bronze begins eliminating germs upon contact and actually eradicates 99.9% of harmful bacteria within 2 hours.
What does this mean for you and me?
As COVID-19 continues to spread in South Korea and in other parts around the world, copper is coming under the spotlight as a material that can potentially kill the virus. And as a result, products are hitting shelves that are made with or contain the metal.
We figure out how fast the virus dies with this fabric, and we prove it can survive past 60 seconds.
To see whether copper products are really reliable virus killers, the U.S. National Institutes of Health compared copper with other materials, such as plastic and stainless steel. It found COVID-19 survived for 72 hours on plastic and 48 hours on stainless steel. However, it was dead after just 4 hours on copper.
Copper is reportedly effective in killing around 20 types of virus and theoretically effective in killing all viruses.
I'm Michael Schmidt. I'm a professor of microbiology here at the Medical University of South Carolina. And I'm going to share with you an exciting story that we've conducted over the last 3 years where we asked a really simple question. Will something as simple as copper, something that each and every one of us have in our pockets, in the coins, will something as simple as metallic copper help control the spread of hospital-associated infections? To make a long story short, the answer is yes.
Mr. Truhr, how can copper improve infection control?
Well, for 20 years now, researchers have been working on copper, and they show that it destroys microbes in the laboratory, but also the hospital environment continuously for the whole life of the product. And that has a big impact on the health of the patients in hospitals.
What components in a hospital should be upgraded with copper?
Well, recently a lot more work has been done on the components in the environment, that they play some part in hospital-acquired infections. And just last year, the American Centers for Disease Control published a list of critical components, and it includes all the touch surfaces that we see here upgraded to copper. Their focus is on cleaning, but copper plays its role also.
How does copper compare to silver?
Well, copper and silver work in similar ways, but copper has something extra, and that is that it works in the normal room temperature environment with no humidity necessary. In fact, it works faster, it seems, when things are dry.
Does copper replace cleaning or disinfection?
No, copper is just another layer to help us combat hospital-acquired infections. So you must clean, you must disinfect, you must continue to have hand hygiene and so on.
Researchers have been working for years on the antibacterial properties of copper. Here in Santiago, Chile, in this children's burns unit, staff are wearing clothes made from a special copper-infused fabric developed by Chilean researchers, which limits the spread of bacteria, fungi and viruses. When bacteria come into contact with copper, the copper sends out ions, and these copper ions penetrate the cell walls. It changes the metabolic processes in the bacteria and kills them. After testing, we developed a non-woven fabric containing copper, which has biocide properties, meaning it eliminates fungi, bacteria and viruses that come into contact with the fabric, reducing infections. It also limits infections being passed between patients and staff.
Copper is something that we're interested in my lab, and I think it's a very interesting molecule to actually prevent or to treat Staph aureus infections. I should say prevent. People really don't use copper to treat Staph aureus infections. But it's something that's been around for thousands of years. People have been carrying water in copper jugs for thousands of years. And anymore, it's kind of the advent of antimicrobial resistance, not just Staph aureus resistance, but antimicrobial resistance, has led us to, as scientists, as physicians, as healthcare professionals, kind of look at other avenues which we might want to pursue to kind of prevent these types of infections. Clearly things come up like personal hygiene, washing your hands after you've seen a patient, sterilizing your hands after you see a patient. But other things have come to light, such as maybe just coating a surface on a bed rail or on a call button with an antimicrobial compound. One such compound is copper. This is a naturally occurring mineral. It is relatively expensive, but it's also very effective at killing microbes. It can kill bacteria, it can kill viruses, and in some instances it's been at least proposed to be able to kill spores. So how copper interacts with the organism? Copper is a positively charged ion. And what copper can do is actually bind to the outside of a cell, something that might have a negatively charged residue on it. Copper then can disrupt the membrane. So remember before we were talking about how organisms use oxygen to breathe, just like we do, microbes do? Well, copper has the ability to disrupt a membrane, and then they can't effectively use oxygen to breathe any longer, so now they're going to grow a lot slower. It puts holes in their cell membranes and allows cellular components to leak out as well as to leak in. Ultimately, it could also accumulate in the cytosol and react with oxygen or other molecules to lead to what's called reactive oxygen species. And reactive oxygen species can lead to protein damage, lipid damage, DNA damage, and ultimately, if allowed to accumulate or to raise to a high enough concentration, cell death. I should also point out that it's quite interesting that not only humans have been using not only reactive oxygen species and copper for thousands of years to treat or to prevent infections by microbes, but our human body actually uses copper as an antimicrobial as well. So phagosomes in white blood cells will actually accumulate copper when they engulf a microbe, and that copper actually aids in killing that microbe. So copper, our bodies use copper to aid in clearing microbial infections.
This is a statement of Sentara's commitment to innovation because we are the largest scale evaluation of this technology in the world.
Of course, the first thing you notice when you walk into the room is that the linen is a brown color versus white. So what we tell the patients is that we're trying to provide an extra layer of protection against hospital-acquired infections.
The copper-infused fabrics and surfaces disrupt the cell wall of bacteria and fungi, interrupts the protein structures, disrupts the genetic material inside the cell. And so it works by multiple mechanisms, which is one of the reasons why there's not been proven to be a resistance to copper.
We are actually seeing that the copper products are working. We're seeing a decrease in our CLABSI rates, pressure ulcers, and surgical site infections.
You may have guessed by now, these items were made with copper.
It's been known for a long time that copper has antibacterial properties. Even the ancient Egyptians knew that. So what better place than a hospital to take advantage of those properties?
Clinical trial done in the US shows that at least you can expect a reduction of 40% in the infection rate. And we are doing our own clinical trial.
This is the intensive care unit of the Roberto del Rio Children's Hospital here in Santiago, the oldest of its kind in Chile. This is also where studies regarding the effectiveness of copper to kill bacteria are being held. Dr. Marisol Navarrete is in charge of the clinical trial and says what she's seen so far is very promising. Even if doctors wash their hands, they're only as clean as the last person who touched the faucet. But with copper fixtures, bacteria simply dies.
The ions of copper, they interact with the membrane of the bacteria. And the metabolism gets disturbed and they are killed.
Hello, welcome to Southampton University. Well, as you can see from what I'm wearing, we're working in sterile laboratory conditions here for this experiment to show the antimicrobial qualities of copper. Well, what we hope to show you is that the sort of bugs that cause infections in hospitals will die off within minutes of being in contact with copper, whereas they may survive for up to weeks or even months on stainless steel. Let me introduce you now to Professor Bill Keevil, who is the Director of Environmental Healthcare here at Southampton and a microbiologist, of course. Professor Keevil, can you explain to us the process, how infections are actually transmitted in a hospital setting?
Well, we know, for example, that 80% of all infections are spread by touch. And for example, a contaminated hand will contaminate at least another 7 touch surfaces if you just go sequentially from there.
So does that mean then that what the surface is made of can make a difference?
Very much so. Is the surface hard and non-absorbent? Is the surface absorbent? We know, for example, that stainless steel and plastics, hard surfaces which germs can survive on for weeks and months, whereas on copper, our research suggests they die very quickly.
So what are we going to see today then?
Well, it's very exciting. What we're showing is that bacteria die rapidly on copper. So we've set up an experiment for you where we're going to inoculate surfaces. We will compare stainless steel against copper. And hopefully what we can show you is that the bacteria will survive very well on stainless steel, but using a special dye system, we will show that they die very quickly on copper.
Well, with me now is Bill Keevil, who's Professor of Environmental Healthcare from the University of Southampton. Thank you so much for coming in. Now, government relies on scientists like you, and you're hoping to do some research into this. What are you focusing on with your Southampton team?
Well, I work with talented colleagues, and we've just put various proposals into the Medical Research Council, who've got a rapid response. We're also working on a new type of face mask, which contains copper, because we've shown copper will kill these types of viruses in just a few minutes.
With a bacteria that still kills 1.5 million people per year, with 50% of those being under the age of 5, we're trying to find new treatments, and we're doing that through copper.
Streptococcus pneumoniae causes pneumonia, ear infections, meningitis, and pink eye. Copper is toxic to the bacteria.
Special fiber combined with copper and iron covers the mask surface, making it suitable to protect wearers against certain viruses. According to Jeonbuk National University and the company that invented this blue mask, 99.8% of a virus died within 1 minute of coming into contact with the mask and had disappeared within 10 minutes. Another face mask made with string coated with copper has gone viral, and sales have skyrocketed in South Korea. Experts say copper itself is effective in killing viruses and bacteria.